What do you do when the people you love the most betray you? What do you do when life feels completely unfair and no one stands by you? What do you do when you feel forgotten, abandoned, and lost? This is the story of Joseph, the man who was betrayed and forgotten, but restored by God. Joseph was just 17 years old when his father, Jacob, showed him a special favor. His father gave him a beautiful, colorful robe, a sign of deep love and blessing. But what Joseph didn't know was that this very robe would cost him his freedom. His brothers hated him. They couldn't stand the favor granted to him by their father. And one day, they decided to do something unthinkable. One day, when Joseph was far from home, his brothers grabbed him, ripped off his robe, and threw him into a pit, alone, scared, helpless. Like as if that were not enough, they sold him as a slave. Imagine the pain Joseph felt at that moment, betrayed by his very own family, stripped of his dignity and identity, abandoned by his very own. But little did he know, God was still working behind the scenes. Joseph was sold to a man named Potiphar in Egypt. He worked as a slave, yet even in the lowest place of his life, Joseph chose to be faithful. He didn't get bitter. He didn't seek revenge. He simply trusted God, even when life was brutally unfair. But just when things started looking better, life knocked him down again. Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph of something he had not done, and without any proof or mercy, Joseph was thrown into prison, betrayed and forgotten again, and now imprisoned for something he was not guilty of. Most people would have given up. But Joseph, he just held on to faith. Even when life was handing out lemons, he never lost faith in God. Joseph waited patiently in prison for years. Yet, no answer from God, no help from anyone, complete silence. Have you ever felt like that? Like God has abandoned you? Like nobody cares? But the truth is, silence from God doesn't mean absence. God was still working in Joseph's life, even when it didn't look like it. One day, the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had a strange dream, and no one could interpret it. Until someone remembered Joseph. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh, and with God's wisdom, Joseph interpreted the dream. He warned the Pharaoh of a famine approaching in the near future. He also suggested a plan to save the land. And in that one moment, Joseph's life took a U-turn. The Pharaoh was so impressed by Joseph that he made him the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. One day a slave, a ruler the next. Only God can turn a pit into a palace. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, during the famine, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt begging for food. They didn't recognize him, but Joseph did. He could have taken revenge. He could have punished them, but instead, he chose to forgive. And through his forgiveness, his entire family was restored. Joseph looked at his brothers and said, "What you meant for evil, God turned it into a blessing." And that's exactly what God does. He turns pain into purpose, betrayal into blessing, and pits into palaces. Maybe today you feel betrayed. Maybe today you feel forgotten. Maybe today you feel like God is silent. But here's what you need to know. God hasn't forgotten you. The same God who lifted Joseph from the pit can lift you from yours. So don't give up, don't get bitter, don't lose hope, because when the time is right, God will turn your pain into purpose. Hold on, your restoration is coming. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Don't forget to subscribe for more Bible stories that speak to your life.